This podcast contains content not suitable for younger listeners. Listener discretion advised.
Are you tired of watching Netflix all day, every day?
Are you exhausted from all of your afternoon naps?
Or are you worried you won't get enough use out of your blue light glasses?
Then make sure you check out the summer reading for next school year. Find it on the summer website that houses the math packets and reading assignments, and have a great summer break!
From MAST Radio in Philadelphia, this is Shakespearial, one story week by week. I'm Erica Montague. The process of putting together this podcast has been an interesting one, unlike any other piece of investigative journalism I've been a part of during my admittedly short career. Fleance's first email, the story of Beth and Mac's life together, Banquo's fatal accident that may not have been an accident, all of it interested me from the beginning and started a 3-year process to get to this final product. But as all of our listeners will know, in March of 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic struck the world and things had to shut down, including my work on this podcast. I had to switch to recorded phone calls and video chats to gather information. I recorded some of my own narration from the closet in my bedroom late at night so the noises of the daytime bustle wouldn't interfere. But the part of the process I want to bring up to you now is quarantining. I have a roommate, and we share a 2-bedroom apartment together in Philadelphia. Adam and I met in college, and while we weren't close friends at the time, through a series of seemingly unrelated and random events, we ended up both needing a place to live at the same time and thought, why not move in together and split the rent? 6 months later, we were spending almost all of our time together due to lockdowns and restrictions in the city. We were both working from home, sharing one bathroom, and seeing each other all hours of the day. It was then inevitable that Adam would end up being involved in this podcast. I think it's time to officially introduce him, because he's going to tell you the last piece of the puzzle. It's the last piece of information we found during this process, but it's the first step on a path that led right to the deaths of Banquo, Beth, and Mac. So, I just feel like I need to mention this because it's important to know who Adam is as a person. But even though we live together, he is insisting we do this through a video chat from our separate bedrooms.
I'm taking COVID precautions.
Are you also wearing a mask, alone in your room?
Hey, I'm sensing a lot of judgment right now.
Yeah, you should be, because there's a lot of judgment from me right now.
I am so sorry I care about your safety, Erica.
I am really starting to regret this decision. Adam actually is the reason this episode exists. While my job turned into work from home in March of 2020, Adam's hours were cut significantly, and he had a lot of free time in the first few months of the pandemic. Enough time, it seems, to do some research of his own. He was intrigued by Banquo's car accident and Beth's death, but kept insisting there had to be more to the story. A man doesn't just kill his best friend out of nowhere. He kept saying, a woman doesn't take her own life for no reason. The interest in the story has always revolved around Mac, but Adam felt like Beth was a piece of the puzzle that we were overlooking. So he took to the internet, like most people do, convinced he could find something that would tie all of this together. And as much as I hate to admit this, he did it. He found the thing that seems to tie it all together.
Okay, Adam, it's your time to shine. Break this down for us. Are you good?
Yes. I just need to make sure all of your amazing listeners can understand me. Come on. Oh, that was funny. You're such a party pooper. Anyways, so here's kind of how it all went down. I essentially lost my job at the start of the pandemic. Not in like a got fired kind of way, but in a we have to cut all your hours, so just stop coming in kind of way. And I didn't know what to do with myself. I knew you were working on your research and this podcast, and I asked you about it, and you basically just sat me down and went through all the story from the car accident, the Mac's death, just the simple stuff.
Yeah, I didn't get into all the small details with you at that point. It was too much to keep track of.
But basically, I asked if I could help with editing, and that got me more into this whole story. You know how you sometimes do an accidental deep dive on Google or Wikipedia or the dark web or something, where you're reading or watching something and you just go, wait, I wonder if that guy was also in that movie, or hold up, is that historically accurate or whatever? And you just look it up, and suddenly 2 hours have gone by and you're just learning about the pets of the children of the royal household of ancient Scotland or whatever. And yeah, that was me. I'd be reading and suddenly wonder about something. The beauty of the internet.
What was it in this podcast that got you started down this rabbit hole?
I mean, it was a lot of things, but the major one was the casino where Mac worked after high school, the Woods of Burnham Casino. I just wanted to know if it still existed since he worked there in the early 1980s. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. It doesn't. It shut down in 1993, but that search brought up some interesting articles. The casino's first owner, a man by the name of Grant Duncan, died in 1984 in a freak accident, and ownership transferred to his son, Donnie, and it didn't go well after that.
What do you mean?
Donnie clearly didn't know what he was doing, but his father also may have been in some shady financial dealings before his death. Essentially, after the senior Duncan's death and Donnie taking over, many of the staff members left and people stopped going and they had to shut down. But there are some really weird connections between that and this whole story. We know Mac worked at the casino, and I guess no one ever looked into that more since it was Banquo's car accident that people tended to focus on. But Banquo also worked there. He did an internship of sorts, basically a summer job in between his junior and senior year of college doing financial stuff. And I don't really understand accounting or anything, so I don't quite know what his actual role was, but he did spend the summer behind the scenes learning the ropes. And there was also an article about Duncan's death as well as his obituary, and both of those felt like there was something more to it. His death just seems weird. And I don't know how else to explain it. Let me just read you a section from this article and then I'll explain it more. Quote, the deceased certainly died doing what he loved. Luckily, according to the first responders on scene, the last thing Mr. Duncan did was indulge in a delicious raspberry jelly donut. Officers at first thought they saw blood on the victim's face, shirt, and hands, but on closer inspection realized it was the jelly from the donut. Unquote.
Oh, okay, so just to let everyone know, I don't completely know the story Adam is going to tell. I have a basic idea, but I don't know exactly what he's planned. I've never heard any of this article before, and I'm so sorry. I know a man died, but whoever wrote this article has a twisted sense of humor, and I feel so bad for laughing at it.
No, that is absolutely hilarious and such a weird way to phrase it. I'm glad you enjoyed it because that's my favorite part of the entire article. It's just so over the top, I guess.
Obviously, I know he had died, but what's the deal with the donut?
Okay, so the donut is such a weird part of the story. Apparently, he choked to death on the donut in his back office and wasn't found until about 4 hours later when the morning shift the manager arrived, saw the body, and called the police. According to reports, there were no signs of forced entry and that the safe was open, but as far as they could tell, no money was missing.
What about security? I mean, it's a casino. I assume they had security in place in some way.
You would think, but the security cameras were just decoys, no footage or anything. Even though it looked like there were cameras all over the place, Duncan was really trying to save money wherever he could. I feel like any business that deals with that much cash should have cameras and security. But I mean, what do I know? Anyways, the medical examiner's report is pretty straightforward as well. They noted bruising, cracked ribs, cyanosis around his face, lips, and fingernail beds, pulmonary edema, and an obstructed airway. The cause of death was essentially choking. Paramedics declared him dead on the scene at 3:22 a.m.
So, what was the explanation they came up with? That seems like just a freak accident. Not sure how you would murder someone with a donut.
Well, they said it was an accident. Remember, no forced entry, no money missing, nothing like that. The bruising and cracked rib was strange, but it was speculated that when Duncan fell, he landed on this safe chest first. I know, it seems weird, but at the time, I imagine there was no reason to think anything suspicious was going on.
But in the context of everything else, it doesn't seem so straightforward anymore.
So here's my idea of what may have happened. Using Beth's diary entries, we know that Mac applied for the manager position at the casino in January of 1984. He'd been promoted pretty quickly from the start, and Beth seems to think he's going to get the job, but he doesn't. It goes to Duncan's son, Donnie instead. She seems to grow concerned about money and their financial situation because of it. They assumed he'd get the job and a raise, so Beth had started classes at the community college and they bought a house. Now, without the job and extra money, things are tight. Not terrible, but definitely not great. Possibly a motive of some kind. For financial reasons, not murder, I mean. That would be absurd. I think Mac and Beth planned to steal money from the casino.
No security cameras. Mac had keys to the back office. Beth is complaining about money in her diary entries. It's a starting point for a theory, but I know you have more pieces to add.
Yeah. Weirdly enough, there are two other major points that I think fit. The first is that Beth and Mac get married at the county courthouse on November 7th, 1984. Banquo and Judith are there as witnesses, but there was no party, no planning, and there weren't even any photos that I could find. They get married less than a week after Duncan's death. The timing is interesting, to say the least, and especially since they weren't even engaged at the time. The other part of this is the therapy session recordings that Mac's lawyer was able to get for his appeal. There are a few moments that suggest something really dark. Could you play the clips that I sent you?
Yeah, of course. This is a session from 2001. I think it's sometime in the fall of that year. There are some issues with the tape, so this session starts at a strange place. We aren't sure what was being discussed before this moment, but clearly Beth is struggling with whatever it is.
You know the fraudulent crime you committed. My sick and dense blood will always be on your hands, no matter how great you try to brush my flowing bodily supply aside.
Stop! Your blood is not on my hands. I'm scrubbing, and I'll never stop. You have no proof. No proof, I tell you. I am an innocent bystander to your manipulative games. No one will believe you. You diabolical.
Beth!
What?
Beth, you are experiencing some sort of hallucination? Please, you can tell me the truth.
No. No, I'm not.
Beth, if you want to eradicate the throbbing pain you are enduring, you need to pave the way for honest communication.
He's in my head, attacking me violently. He wants his vengeance, revenge, for what Mac and I have done to him.
Beth, who is this he you're referring to?
I just want to say that we really haven't spent enough time talking about how Beth's therapist is kind of the worst. I mean, he has some good moments, but overall, bad vibes. He's totally right about the honest communication part, but all that yell stuff, I can't stand this dude. Anyways, Beth is talking about blood on her hands, and we obviously have to wonder whose blood it is. I know you already played some of her sessions the last episode, but remember, she keeps talking about her sins, and she develops a hand washing compulsion because of it. Uh, I just I don't think it's about Banquo, but about Duncan. I think they planned a robbery, and somehow Duncan ended up dead, accidentally. And I don't think they actively planned on killing him. I mean, not with the donut. That that'd be absurd, but the guilt was something Beth couldn't live with. Play the next one now.
You're being very demanding, Adam, but sure, this is from a session in early 2002.
Bess, this may sound too patriarchal of me, but do you not appreciate your femininity? Why do you emphasize so much on wanting to be a man?
Is it not obvious from everything I've told you? Mac is incompetent and weak at his core. Always has been, always will be. Tell me, doctor, how do you assume that I will manage to achieve power in this life if Mac is in control? Let's hear some of that Yale knowledge, huh?
Well, I can only presume that in your mind, you masquerade as the male dominant figure, the pants of the relationship, if you will.
Why, of course. What's wrong with wanting to be on the high ground?
The question is, Bess, why do you seem to have to be a man to achieve high status?
A man is not questioned if his purpose for existence is love, is marriage. A man is not misused if they are nothing. A man's mere purpose is not to bear children. Why should I want to fulfill such a frivolous image that immediately comes to mind when one witnesses me? A man can rule. A man can have power and override anyone in an instant. I don't want to be approachable, easy to catch. I want to be intimidating with all my prestige. If only the roles were reversed.
I understand your perception. Perhaps that's why the year class of 58 was conquered by so many men.
You know, Banquo was always an ambitious student. He would always tackle such pretentious subjects. He wanted to impress schools like Yale or Harvard. I always admired him for his studiousness, and I solemnly believed that his child would be raised with the same character. To say the least, I was surely right.
Well, I am pleased that your acknowledgement of my prestigious education has yielded you a breakthrough. Tell me, Bess, why does it make you incredibly emotional to discuss Banquo and his child, other than the fact that Banquo has passed away, which you considered quite queerly?
Banquo and Judith had known that Mac and I were having trouble conceiving. Our dinners together would display melancholy atmospheres because of it, and how greatly I desired for a child. They didn't think to leave dear Fleance with us. Doesn't matter now. I no longer care for the privileged child. But their inconsideration of my longing for motherhood definitely scarred me.
Who are the legal guardians of Fleance now, if you don't mind me asking?
Banquo's cousins.
And
You know, why did he not consider me? I don't understand. Banquo and I loved one another. We were each other's wingmen. I would support him in his relationship with Judith. He would do the same for me with Mac. We always conversed about everything first, no matter what.
I thought you did not care for the child.
I don't. The intricateness of it all is just not clear.
Yeah, that therapist is not my favorite, but it is interesting to hear Beth speak so aggressively about her feelings toward her femininity, toward her struggles with how women can be viewed and treated. She sounds so done with her husband at this point, talking about how he's incompetent and weak. She almost sounds defeated as well, especially talking about Fleance and Banquo at the end.
She acts like she's angry with Banquo, but she was devastated by his death. I think Mac killed him. I think he messed with the tires. I don't think Beth knew he was going to do it. The first death may have been an accident, but Banquo's was intentional. Fleance could have been in the car, and he was in the car. Mac would have known that was a possibility. It's evil. Can you imagine being Beth in that situation?
So she plans a robbery, a man ends up dead, and her husband becomes a murderer. Not the life she pictured, I'm sure. So lay it all out there for us. What do you think happened that night?
Okay, I think they planned a robbery for the money. Duncan wasn't supposed to be there that night, but we know from the police's questioning of his son Donnie, it was a last minute change of plans. Mac wouldn't have known about it. Somehow, Duncan ended up in the back room with them unexpectedly. Maybe he was surprised at them being there, and maybe they did something to him specifically, but he ended up choking on the donut. Beth and Mac flee without taking any money. They get married 6 days later. I think that was a Beth decision. This was their big secret. What happened in that back office on November 1st and getting married, in a way, felt like a safe way to keep that secret. She writes pages about her senior prom, but nothing much in her diary about her own wedding. I don't buy it. Years later, Beth takes her own life on the same day that Duncan died 19 years earlier. Could be a coincidence, but with everything else, it seems fit.
And Banquo, what about his death? How does that fit with everything?
Beth gets really angry in her therapy sessions. Well, angry and upset that she and Mac didn't get to adopt Fleance after the car accident. Maybe Banquo knew or suspected that something wasn't adding up with Duncan's death and Mac wanted him out of the picture. Maybe he wanted Fleance out of the picture too. Maybe he thought Fleance knew something.
You know, he was only 5 at the time of the accident, right? I'm pretty sure Fleance wasn't actively plotting against Mac.
Uh, have you ever seen the movie The Omen? The kid in that movie was literally the Antichrist. Kids can be terrible. Not that Fleance was evil, but maybe Banquo had said something. We don't know.
You've had some weird theories before, but this is something else.
Yeah, that's not my actual theory. I do think maybe Banquo suspected Mac of something though, or maybe he saw Fleance as a way to patch up his failing marriage, give Beth that child she always wanted. And if Fleance died in that accident, well, there was always that money. And they didn't get Fleance. They didn't get the money. And Beth seems to have realized her husband had something to do with it, and the guilt from not just Duncan's death, but Banquo's as well. She planned the robbery in 1984, not a murder. But it all seemed to go horribly wrong.
Shakespearial is brought to you by MAST Radio in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Thanks to our sponsors, the Living Shakespeare Society, the Massed English Department, and our producer, Bill Shakes. Remember, this podcast is a tale told by an idiot full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Thanks for listening.